If you're like me, then you not only love fishing, but you also love traveling. Today we're going to talk about combining these two wonderful things. Let's go! Hello and welcome back to another episode of 5 Minute Fish Talk, a show where I have 5 minutes on the timer to discuss all things fishing. This show appears every single Friday at 8 a.m. Eastern Time Zone, so if you're new to this channel, make sure to click that red subscribe button below to stay tuned. I just loaded 5 minutes on this timer here, and you know what that means. It's time to get real, folks. We're talking about traveling with fishing gear, and I'm not wearing my travel hat. This is my travel fishing hat. Thanks again to my wonderful sister for giving this as a gift when she was in Australia. You rock. This is awesome. We're talking about traveling with fishing gear. Guys, there's a couple things that I wanted to talk about in today's video. The first would be why should you do it? Why should you bring a fishing rod with you when you go somewhere? We're going to get to that in a second. But two, some of the advice on how to do so in the first place, because fishing gear is big and it's fragile. It's not easy to bring with you. So I got some tips for you. I've been doing it for the last couple years to a degree, and I think I've learned a few things. So, first and foremost though, why should you do it? Well, I think it's pretty obvious. If you're like me, you like to challenge yourself as an angler. You want to grow, you want to become better. And how is the best way to do that? Putting yourself in new situations. And so when you're traveling, you're fishing new bodies of water. You might be fishing new species, but you might be fishing the same species in elsewhere, whatever. You can learn from that. And honestly, in my opinion, it's so much fun to put yourself in new challenges and new experiences. So that's why I do it. And I think that's why you would enjoy doing it as well. But let's talk about how to do it in the first place, because quite honestly, that's probably the harder part, and that's probably why you're here watching this video right now. So, a couple things. When you're out on the road, in the air, wherever, if you're going to a new state, you should, or even a new country, you should always buy a fishing license. It's probably the safe thing to do. Not only that though, it is, you want to be legal. You want to be doing the legal thing, and then you also want to be providing for that conservation efforts that really the fishing license go to. So you're going to go to the DNR, and they're going to be able to make sure that the populations of fish are good for years to come. So that's why I think buying a fishing license is the first piece of advice. The second though is whether you're in the road or in the air is going to kind of dictate how you travel or how you bring fishing gear with you. Obviously, if you're in the air, you can't really bring a one-piece full-size rod. So here's my recommendation. I have a video on this, but it's like it's a rod tube. It's like a 4-piece casting rod, and it's meant for travel. Basically, I got this at Cabela's. It's not exactly expensive, but I've traveled with it multiple times. I've had no issues at all. The same thing applies to fly fishing gear if you are into that, or if you're trying to get into that. That's what's nice about fly fishing gear. You can really travel with it very easily. Put this on the side of a backpack, carry it on the plane, no issues at all. It's hard, it protects the rod, you're solid. But if you're in the air and you really don't want to invest in that, you can always get a 2-piece rod and just break it apart and carry it on with you. Now just be careful with that, because obviously if you don't have a tube for it, you just want to make sure that it's not getting smashed or something like that. But I've seen so many people do that as well. Then, as far as if you're on the road, just put it in the passenger seat running back. I've done that so many times, and it really doesn't interfere with passengers. So that's my piece of advice. I would bring like an all-purpose rod that doesn't take up a ton of space. Obviously, if you're bringing an 8-foot swim bait rod, that's going to take up a little bit more space than something that's about 6.5 feet in medium power. That's my piece of advice for traveling with rods. Now, when it comes to the reel, if you're flying, a reel's easy. They're not that big. You can just throw it in your backpack and put it in like some form of zip type bag, or like a drawstring bag, and then just put it in some sort of padded area, because obviously you don't want to break your reel. So I just generally put mine in a padded area within my backpack inside of like a drawstring bag, and I'm solid. I've had no issues. But the most important part, guys, my tackle system. How do you travel with tackle? I got a box, and I basically dictated this as my travel box. Whether I'm on the road or in the air, I can bring this with me. I can throw it in a carry-on, I can throw it in a check bag, no issues. Obviously, one piece of advice, if you're gonna be carrying something on, do not bring knives with you. So like a multi-tool or something, you don't wanna put that. That's a no-no. But if you can, check your bag, obviously that's not gonna be an issue. What do I bring though? I mean, obviously it just really depends on what kind of species you're gonna be going for, because if you're in an area and you're gonna be like, I'm 100% fishing for one species, it's a little bit easier. You can kind of hone in on what they like to eat. For me, I like to have general purpose stuff, because a lot of times I don't know what I'm gonna be fishing for. It might be bass, it might be pike, it might be catfish, it might be bluegill, whatever. So I like to have various terminal tackle at all times in this box. Hooks, weights, jig heads of various sizes, and they're always going to stay in there. The other things that I'm always going to keep in there are swim baits, small crankbaits, and topwaters, because these are kind of multi-purpose baits. Other species other than a bass will still eat these. It looks like a shad, and guess what? A lot of predator species of fish eat shad. So boom, you got that. Then the other things that I'm going to bring is stuff like grubs, Ned rigs, Senkos, etc., etc. Holy cow! I got through it all, guys. 5 minutes went by super fast, but that's because there's so much content when it comes to this subject. So if you have any further questions, if you have any tips, drop a comment below. So without further ado, thank you so much for watching this episode of 5 Minute Fish Talk. If you have any buddies that are getting ready to go travel, share this video with them. It might help them. Otherwise, have yourself a fantastic weekend, and we'll catch you next time.